Alright, so today's mystery is going to be the story of a ghost ship.
It's a ghost ship.
Yeah.
Like something Scooby-Doo would attack.
Totally, or investigate, and then they would find out that it was actually just Old Man Jenkins in a mask. A ghost pirate.
Yeah, I was gonna say a pirate ghost mask.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of stories of ghost ships. Probably the most famous one is a legend. Have you heard of the Flying Dutchman?
Yeah, of course.
But that one is... It's definitely more on the mythical ends of things. They think there's a little bit of truth that started that story, but most of the story of the Flying Dutchman is like, this ghost ship appears, and anyone who has seen it is instantly cursed, and all of this terrible stuff happens, and they cover this in the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Uh-huh.
Some of that's based on the legend. It's interesting, but that is not actually the ghost ship we're going to be talking about today. We're going to talk about a sort of recent one from the 1800s that is actually one of the ocean's most enduring mysteries, actually. It's a true case file. The Mary Celeste. Have you heard of her?
I have not.
Oh, good. So, let me set the scene. The year was 1872, and the Canadian merchant ship De Gracia was sailing to Genoa, Italy. On December 4th, at about 1 in the afternoon, the helmsman sighted a ship in the distance. The ship had a slight list and seemed to be sailing erratically, just following along with the wind and the waves. The strange movements and the odd set of her sails led the captain of the Del Gracia, a man named David Morehouse, to suspect that something was very wrong. He tried to signal the other ship. They used flags. They would just ring up different flags to ask, like, hey, are you okay?
Yeah.
Things like that. But they received no reply, and as the other vessel drew closer, he could see that there was nobody at the helm. So, he sent some of his crew over in a dinghy to investigate.
Mm-hmm.
The men were surprised when they saw the name on the stern. This was the Mary Celeste, a ship that they were familiar with, had seen not long ago, at the port of New York. Both Mary Celeste and Del Gracia had started their journey from this port and were headed for the same place, Genoa, Italy. But Mary Celeste had left port 8 days before Del Gracia and was the faster ship, so she should have already been at her destination unloading her cargo.
Oh, okay.
It was also odd that there was no distress signal or flag that was flying over the ship. It seemed like there was something very wrong with it, but it also didn't seem like they had signaled for help at any point. The sailors then climbed aboard, and what they found next shocked them. Alright, quiz time. What did they find? You can just make up what you think would be shocking to some sailors.
I think they found nothing.
Nothing?
Dun dun dun!
Oh man.
And or a bunch of mermaids.
Oh, mermaids is always good. Bring it back. Bring it back to Atlantis. They could find no one on board. It was as if the crew and passengers had simply vanished into thin air. Some of the cabin interiors were wet from water that had entered through doorways and skylights and stuff, but for the most part, everything was in reasonable order. Their personal possessions, including, like, money and valuables, were all still on board, neatly put away, neatly stored. A meal had been prepared and was left untouched. The galley equipment was neatly stowed away, and there were ample provisions. There was like 6 months worth of supplies of food and water, all still fine. The ship's cargo of 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol were all accounted for. I forget what denatured alcohol is, but I think it's like a solvent. It's like an industrial thing that they add bad flavoring to keep people from drinking it. So it's not the fun kind of alcohol.
Cool. So it's just like going to the drugstore and getting a small container of alcohol. If you feel like drinking, don't drink that alcohol.
Like the rubbing alcohol or something like that? Yeah. Don't drink rubbing alcohol.
Not good.
That's not going to be a fun time.
No.
So yeah, the cargo was just full of these barrels of stuff. And it should be pointed out that alcohol was considered one of the more dangerous cargoes to carry.
Ooh, why?
Because it can leak and be a little bit explosive.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
The captain of the ship, of the Mary Celeste, which I'll get into in a little bit, was known to be a cautious man. So, like, he deemed this was a safety risk he was willing to take. And it was worth a lot of money to deliver this sort of stuff. So yeah, the ship's cargo, completely untouched, all accounted for. The last entry in the ship's log was from 9 days before, after the ship had sailed through a few days of stormy weather. And it recorded Mary Celeste's position as being near Santa Maria Island in the Azores, which was nearly 400 nautical miles away from the point where Del Gracia had encountered it. There were no obvious signs of fire or violence, and the evidence indicated an orderly departure from the ship by means of the missing lifeboat. So thoughts so far?
A different ship came by, stole only the people for slavery, didn't take anything else, just the people.
Just didn't take the treasure?
No, just the people.
It should...
And then sailed away.
And just took the people. I mean, I guess at that time that probably could be a risk. Pirates could be a risk.
Yeah.
Pirates is one of the big ones at first that they thought. But it seemed really weird that the pirates would not have taken any of the supplies or the money, the stuff that was worth actual money. It seems strange that there did not appear to be any signs of violence, like the crew wouldn't have even fought back. But maybe these were really sneaky and they got them in the night or something. And they didn't have someone keeping watch. I don't know.
Maybe they weren't tough sailors.
Maybe. This is also true.
They were known among the rest of the sailing community as wimps and people who don't fight back. They were passive sailors.
They were pacifist sailors?
Yeah, they didn't believe in fighting. So the one pirate took the captain and the rest of the people were just like, you know what? We're beat. We'll go with you.
That's an interesting theory. Alright, so there were a few other things that were strange about the situation. There were about 3 feet of water below deck, but that would not have been an alarming amount of water for a ship this size, and she was far from in danger of sinking. Along with that, there was a makeshift sounding rod, which is kind of a device that they use to measure how much water's in the hold, and that was found abandoned on the deck, so it seemed that they were keeping measure of the water on the under deck. The lifeboat was missing, and a long, sturdy tow rope was found to be trailing behind the ship.
But not connected to anything.
Not connected to anything. There was just a rope trailing behind the ship, and also possibly related, the lifeboat was missing. The ship's clock was not working, and several of the navigational instruments were broken or could not be found, and the ship's papers were missing as well. But that appeared to be the only missing stuff from the ship. Lifeboat, navigational stuff, and some papers. No valuables, no food, no personal effects. People's shoes were left behind. The sails were partly set and had suffered some damage, and much of the rigging was awry with ropes hanging loose still on the sides, but for the most part, this was a perfectly sailable ship. So, yeah, like, it kind of seemed to imply that they had abandoned ship.
Yeah!
But again, weird.
It is weird, because, like, it's plausible that somebody just had a major panic attack about the 3 feet of water and was like, we have to get off now! Take nothing!
We're sinking! Abandoned ship!
But the fact that this is supposed to be an experienced captain, right? Like,
yeah.
It's not the first time doing this route to where, Italy?
Yeah. They were crossing the Atlantic, but yeah, he was known to be an experienced captain. He had sailed many times before, though this was the first time sailing this ship. Or this was his first time sailing this ship.
Oh, well, I mean, but I feel like when they get on a ship and they're confident in themselves to not only run this ship, but run a crew of what, at least 15 men?
I think there was a total of 10 people on the ship.
Oh, that's not enough. Maybe that's why he freaked out.
Yeah. Oh, this is so this was a smaller, it's called a merchant brigantine. So it was not a big ship. It was the captain, his wife, their like 2-year-old daughter, Sophia, and then seven other dudes that he handpicked to sail the ship with him. And that was enough crew for a ship this size. The ship that found them, the Del Gratia, also had a crew of about the same size.
Oh, okay, so it's about the ship size of the boat that Will Smith is sailing in the new Aladdin.
Yeah, not a huge ship, not a small ship, just kind of a medium-sized merchant ship.
That looks like it's fully able to be crewed by 7 men. And have a woman and a child on it and not be a big deal.
Yep. The people who found the ship, the Del Gratia, they after seeing that it was abandoned and all this, they basically were like, well, we should take it back to port. We're gonna take it to Gibraltar. Remember that place?
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about it last episode. It's like they all come together. But They took it. So Gibraltar is kind of like at the entrance to that the Mediterranean Sea. So
Yeah.
they basically took it there to get salvage rights to it. So he split his crew in half, and part of them were on the Mary Celeste, and part of them were on the Del Gratia, and they sailed to Gibraltar because under maritime law, a salvor could expect a substantial share of the combined value of the rescued value and the cargo. So you can make big money if you found a derelict ship.
Okay, so in like our money, he's looking at a couple $1,000s.
I don't know what it would have been very profitable for him to have taken the time, because it made his journey much slower to have to split his crew. So he got to his destination much later, not just from stopping to investigate this, but then also both of them were
Tow it in.
Yep.
Okay.
They said like the weather was relatively calm for most of the way to Gibraltar, but each ship was seriously undermanned, so the progress was slow.
Yeah.
So they pulled it into port, and an investigation started, and we'll come back to that in a while. But first, let's talk about the crew of the Mary Celeste. So there's two things we could talk about. We could talk about the crew, or we could talk about the ship, because she already had a reputation for being a cursed ship before this journey.
Oh, really?
Yes. So which do you want to hear about first?
Mary Celeste checkered past.
Her checkered past. All right. To begin with, she was originally called the Amazon. She was built in Canada. Here's another quiz for you. On her very first voyage, which of the following occurred, lending the cursed moniker to the ship? A. The captain suddenly grew ill and died. B. The ship ran into some fishing equipment and was badly damaged. Or C. The ship ran into another ship and accidentally sunk that other ship.
Oh, these are all good options. I'm gonna say C. Ran into another ship and destroyed it.
All of those things happened on her first journey.
What?
Yes.
Oh my.
So, understandably, she started getting known as being like a cursed ship. When she was in the dock for repairs from the fishing equipment incident, the dock around her caught fire and burned. She did not burn. She survived, but,
That is the first clue. This ship is haunted.
Yeah.
You burn it.
After that, she was wrecked by a storm. She was driven ashore in a storm and got totally wrecked. At this point, the owners were like, I don't want it. So somebody else bought the wreck and paid to repair it and completely refurbish it, make it saleable again. And at this point, they redubbed it the Mary Celeste. And then immediately, the creditors seized her because he ran out of money. She changed hands a bunch of times after that, during which case another captain died, before finally coming to the current captain, one Benjamin Spooner Briggs. Yeah.
With that name, he should have become a captain of a boat.
Yep. Benjamin Briggs actually came from a family of boat captains. He had 5 brothers, so they were all the sons of a sailing captain, and all but one of them also became captains of the sea. And he had a lot of experience, like I said earlier, sailing ships. He was 37, I think, at the time of the Mary Celeste incident. And by that point, he'd been a captain for quite some years. He'd worked his way up to sailing master, which is a rank.
Okay.
A master of the seas, if you will. He had actually, before signing on to captain the Mary Celeste, had actually thought about retiring from the sea and opening a hardware store with his brother.
He should have.
Yeah, he should have. He had done really well for himself. He had some money set aside and just decided to invest in one last enterprise.
All right.
So, in 1872, he took his 2-year-old daughter, Sophia, and his wife, Sarah. Yep. And they accompanied him on this voyage to Italy. He also had a son named Arthur, but the son stayed behind with his grandmother because he was going to school.
Oh, okay. Oh, that throws a monkey wrench in my plans. Because I was going to say, what if, because we don't know what happened day to day.
Well,
what if he wanted to, because back then it was super easy to just sail to a different place, say a different name, and become that person.
This is true. Do you think that he, midway through the journey was like, this ship is dumb. Let's just take this lifeboat and just leave it into the middle of the ocean, and we'll go start a new life. Forget Arthur.
I think that if this was an older brother scenario where he was kind of like pushing him into settling down and being something that he wasn't, and he was just like, you know what, I want to disappear. And so he put together a crew of people he disappeared, which now sounds like a Disney movie, but whatever.
Yeah.
But he put together a crew of people who also wanted to disappear and or needed to disappear. And he was like, okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to abandon the ship. Nobody will know what happened to us. We won't be responsible for anything, because I'm sure somebody on the ship was like, I got to go to jail. And he was like, well, not if you die at sea. And so then they sailed to a different place using the lifeboat, and they just made it look like everybody disappeared.
I mean, that is an interesting theory. There was some people did think that perhaps like insurance fraud or something to that effect was one of the answers to this. What we know about the captain's personality, because he kept a daily log. He was very insistent, like he kept very careful notes about a lot of his stuff.
Sailor.
He was known to be a pretty honorable dude, and he handpicked his crew.
Oh, see? Specifically so they could disappear.
Yep. He described them as peaceable and first-class sailors in a letter to his mother shortly before the voyage.
I mean, yeah, if I'm fitting to disappear, I'm gonna tell my mom that, like, these are great guys. I'm on a great crew.
Yep. His wife Sarah reported to her mother that the crew appeared to be quite capable if they continue as they had begun. So let's see, we had the steward, which was a newly married fellow.
Maybe not happily married.
Oh, newly married and he's already unhappily married?
Hey, maybe he felt the pressure.
This is a soap opera. I like it. He was signed on with a personal recommendation. Then there were 4 general seamen, were all Germans from the Frisian Islands?
Yes, they were in trouble in Germany. They needed to get out.
Alright. Sure. Alright.
I'm gonna make the facts fit, and
No.
Make the facts fit.
I like this. This story is already more interesting. This is why I asked you to help. They had originally planned to set out 2 days earlier, but the weather was uncertain, and Briggs was known to be a cautious man, so he decided to wait for better conditions. So he waited till it was nicer weather.
Yeah, see, he didn't want to actually die. He just wanted to disappear. So he's like, can't go out in the bad weather, because if we go out in the bad weather, we could actually die. We need to make it look plausible, y'all.
Mm-hmm. It should be noted that the year of 1872 is apparently there was famously bad winter storms on the sea. Like, worse storms than had been recorded in written history for sailing the Atlantic. So it was a bad year to sail, just in general. And at this point, his wife took an opportunity to write one last letter to her mother-in-law, who was watching their son. Tell Arthur, I make great dependence on the letters I shall get from him, and I will try to remember anything that happens on the voyage, which he would be pleased to hear.
Does it say how old Arthur was? Was he old enough to be in school?
He was like 6 or 7. They said their daughter was 2, and I think he was like 5 years older than her.
Okay.
I'm still not sure why they decided to bring the baby with and just leave. Well, I guess if he was school. But back in the day, didn't people homeschool a lot too? I guess this is the 1800s, I don't know.
You want to know why, Ian?
What?
6 or 7-year-olds can talk. They know their name. 2-year-olds don't. You can change their name.
Alright, there you go. You got it. So, they set out, and they kept a log. Not much eventful happened other than some storms, and then they just vanished.
Quote, unquote.
Quote, unquote. Again, I do want to remind you, they were found kind of in the middle of the sea. They were sort of near the Azores Islands, but not like they were in sight of them or anything. And this is a lifeboat, so consider your sailing ability in a lifeboat.
There was a tow rope, right?
Yep.
Okay, so they couldn't have another ship waiting, or had somebody have a ship out there, and use said lifeboat to get on said ship, then sail away?
That's a fair point. However, other people had seen them sailing in their journey previously, and they were not tailing any boat behind them.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you can't send a letter.
Be like, meet us at this point in the middle of the ocean, bring your best boat.
Yeah.
That is an interesting idea, and I don't think that's a theory anyone's brought up, so I like it. I think most people think they were just tailing the life behind them on this rope.
Possible.
Like, they were scared of the ship and decided their chances were better on the lifeboat, but they still wanted to be near the ship because it had all their food and stuff on it.
I mean, I guess.
Alright, so let's get to the theories. Oh, wait, do you have any questions so far?
No, I just want to know how well my theory is gonna hold up.
Alright.
That's the theory I'm gonna stick to.
Yeah,
is that they needed to start over somewhere new, and they made a crew that also needed to start over somewhere new.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow they had a different ship or a different something.
Somebody came and met them.
Yeah. And then they sailed away. And changed their names.
That is interesting. It should be pointed out, the Mare Celeste was very heavily insured at this point because she had gone through so many repairs and stuff. They probably had to pay a lot to insure her. So some people thought that this was perhaps part of a insurance fraud type scam.
I mean, that can be folded into my theory.
Yeah.
Who says that they can't, hey bud, I'm gonna sail this ship, I'm gonna leave it at this place in, like, the middle of where you're also supposed to be traveling.
Mm-hmm.
And
if you
pick it up for me and take it to Gibraltar.
Yeah.
And then you can have this percentage of the money. And I can have the rest, so I can start over my new life.
It's interesting, because they do think...
in some debt.
Well, the captain was not in debt. The previous owner of the ship was in debt. That's what the Mare Celeste was in debt, and that's why it was sold to somebody else. Like, he refurbished it, and then immediately went into debt from refurbishing it. So that was just part of the bad luck stuff that happened. But Captain Briggs was, as far as we know, doing pretty good for himself. That's why he was thinking about opening up a business, supposedly.
Maybe he left all of his money to his son and needed the ship money to restart his life.
Okay.
Boom.
Alright. It's interesting to note that some people think that the captain of the Mare Celeste, Benjamin Briggs, and the captain of the Del Gracia were possibly friends, or at least acquaintances in life. Like, I mean, not just because they had set sail from the same port, it seems like they might have known each other in passing. So there is some conspiracy that perhaps they were colluding together to arrange this. But they did not get very much money for salvaging this ship, because there was this huge investigation, and the insurance company, they didn't want to pay out unless they thought there was proof that no one was coming back. And there was no proof that anybody had died or anything, so they were just out there missing, so they wouldn't give out the money, basically.
Well, I mean, you don't have... And they didn't have any livestock on the ship?
No livestock. Lots of food rations.
Well, you can't make it look like somebody died without having some sort of evidence, and you would need livestock so you're not actually hurting each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's plausible. My theory is still plausible. He wanted to go missing.
Mm-hmm.
He knew he had a friend who would find the ship and turn it in and get a boatload of money, literally.
Mm-hmm. Give
him a percentage of the money, and then take the money that from the ship being turned in to start a new life.
Yeah. And then basically the men of the Del Gracia would take, that's, yeah. There's also a theory that maybe the people on the second ship actually killed off the people of the Mare Celeste, and just, like, pushed them off, and then we're like, oh, we found this abandoned ship.
I mean, I guess so.
But
it's plausible. I like my idea better.
Yeah, your idea is a little bit more fun. Also, I feel like people would not be stupid enough to be like, I'm gonna murder all the people on the ship. Oh, look, Court, I found this abandoned ship. You would think you'd be the first suspect. If you were like, oh, this ship, totally abandoned. They were also, for the record, the first suspects in the case. But, they were cleared, because there was no evidence of any shenanigans on board the ship. And they barely got paid for it, so sucks for that crew. Yeah, they didn't get barely any money for it. So other theories. Do you want to start with the wild ones, or the ones that are the most reasonable first?
Let's go wild to reasonable.
Alright, my personal favorite one is a giant squid attacked the ship and picked off the people and ate them. This is a theory. Sea monsters.
I mean, I like the theory. It makes my story a little spicier.
Yeah. It's also just, fun artwork. You've surely seen pictures of the Kraken latched onto a ship, a sailor in tentacle. Hey, true or false? Are squid known to attack ships?
No, false.
Oh, yep.
Well, but I know that because, like, most big squids, don't they live in the dark ocean?
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
don't really like any sunlight or people or big thing. Like, they pretty much are just like, I'm a big creature that just wants to chill, bro. Leave me alone.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, I think they are hunters, but they hunt, in the deeps.
Yeah, not ships.
And they're very cautious. Like, we've had a hard time getting video of colossal squid. Just because they're very elusive and, like, just trying to lure them out, they very carefully, like, grab the bait and take little tiny chews from it.
Uh-huh.
With their parrot beak. I think it's cool and weird that squids have beaks.
Yeah. Side note, little fun fact about me, I was terrified of giant squid for a really long time in my life.
Yeah?
Yeah, there's a movie, Sinbad, where a giant squid does attack.
Oh, yeah. Was it the animated Sinbad?
Yeah.
Yeah. This theory doesn't hold up very well because squids in general are not known to attack ships. And also, it seems weird that the squid would then also take the captain's, navigation equipment and the lifeboat.
So squid just yum 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 lifeboat?
Yeah, that's the first theory.
Like Pac-Man?
Yeah, just waka waka waka. It's fun.
Yeah. Based on what we know now about giant squids, that seems that plausible.
No. I get where all the stories of, like, the Kraken come from, because if you saw a giant squid, you'd be like, oh heck, that thing could totally eat this ship, but they don't. Another fun theory that's kind of a newer one, and also most people don't believe in, is aliens! They were abducted, just like levitated away to a UFO.
No, I don't believe that.
Yeah, no. Also, again, why did the aliens take their lifeboat and navigation equipment? But, I mean, I like that aliens shows up in just about every mystery.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know what else could have done this. Obviously, it was aliens. Aliens. Alright, so going to the slightly more reasonable ones now. They think there could have been an interesting natural weather phenomenon. Like, have you ever seen a water spout?
Yes.
So they think a couple of things happen here. They think that a water spout may have struck the ship or been nearby, and then when water spouts happen, they do this weird thing where they change the barometric pressure. So they think that because there was water found in the hold, it was clear that the crew had at some point probably been testing the water levels in their hold. The barometric pressure from, if there was a water spout nearby, it might make it look like the ship had way more water in it than actually it had.
Okay.
So they would think they were sinking. Well, what do you think?
I mean, okay, so more water was in the ship and then leaked out?
So the sounding rod is like a tube, which, you remember when we were doing the Cartesian divers experiment in science class?
Yes.
And, like, you could use the water pressure to make it raise and lower. That was what was happening in the tube, they think, is that they were using this device to, like, poke it into the hole to see how much water was down there, and they think that the water was getting sucked up out of into the tube, making it appear that there was much more water in the hole than there actually was. But there wasn't. There was not very much water in the hole. Basically, their devices seem to indicate if they're in this very specific circumstance where there was a water spout happening, their devices could give them a false reading that would imply that there was more water in the boat than it actually had.
Okay, but as a captain, wouldn't you want to go down and see with your eyeballs?
Yes, you would think so.
Ship is gonna go down.
Open up the hatches.
If your baby and wife are on the ship.
Yeah, and all of your possessions, all of your money. Yeah, you would think that.
Cargo that you're supposed to be carrying.
Yep. There's another theory that a sea quake or something happened. Fast forwarding a little bit. When they were doing the inspection, doing the investigation, they unloaded all of the cargo and found that 9 of the barrels were empty.
Huh.
People didn't really think that the crew drank the barrels of alcohol because, again, poisoned, gross, not fun to drink stuff. And the captain was known to be a proponent of, what is it called, teetotaling? He didn't drink, like, at all.
Oh, okay.
So they don't think that the crew drank the 9 barrels of alcohol. But those barrels were found to be made out of a wood that was kind of porous. They were like an inferior kind of wood that didn't actually seal all the alcohol in. So the alcohol evaporated through the pores of the wood, is what they believe might have happened. And that would have made basically a vapor that is highly explosive. They think that the crew smelled alcohol fumes or something and thought, oh no, the ship is about to explode. They tied the lifeboat to the ship with their longest rope that they had, and then they jumped in the lifeboat just to wait out the explosion, I guess? Or to wait while the alcohol vapors aired out?
It's suspicious that there are 9 barrels, and it sounds like they would be big enough to hold human body.
Oh, okay.
Plus, 2-year-old babies aren't that big.
Well, but the 9 barrels were still there. They were just empty.
Maybe it was Plan A.
Oh, okay. They emptied them out so that they could hide people in barrels?
Yeah.
And then they were like, no, these barrels are way too stinky. Did you think this sense of emergency that thinking the ship's gonna explode would explain the food and belongings being left?
Yeah.
And he probably didn't have time to write in his journal like, OMG, the ship's about to blow.
Yeah.
So everyone probably rushed on the lifeboat. And they think that he may have, like, grabbed his navigational instruments and ship papers in case she blew up, because they would need that stuff to file for insurance. Which could also go into your other theory, though.
Yeah, or to get out of Dodge so they could get to those islands.
Yep. As for the long rope that was tied to it, they think they used it to tie the lifeboat to the Mary Celeste, and wait for as long as possible for the flammable fumes to air out and then return to the ship. But at
what if the plan was originally... Sorry, I figured out how my 9 barrels play into this.
Okay.
What if the...
No.
What if the plan originally was to blow up the ship? To take all you need is the navigational stuff to prove that your...
The papers? The ship papers? Yeah.
So, like, that your ship blew up in the middle... So, like, what if that was his plan?
And then it backfired because it didn't blow up?
Yeah. And so somebody found it, and it was a person that he knew, and they tried to turn it in because he was like, and like somehow it got back to them. Maybe the guy who was on the same route was supposed to see the ruin of the ship, like the flame and the explosions.
Yep.
Or, driftwood or whatever, and was to be like, oh no, they all died. And he was supposed to say that the ship had, like, blown up and then they had no... Like, he was going to be a second witness.
Right.
That, yes, I saw the ship blow up, and that's why they got on the lifeboat. That's why they took the navigational stuff. And that's why the 9 barrels of alcohol were empty, because they opened them and were going to set a flame. But for whatever reason, the flame didn't go boom. And the ship was still there, and so the dum-dum just was like, I'll take it in, it's fine, I want money, like, double-crossed him.
Well, couldn't he have then blown it up himself, though? Like, they had the ability to make fire. They could have just been like, oops, silly Captain Briggs, you didn't actually blow up your ship. Let me help you with that.
Okay, so maybe his friend, he knew that the friend was going to be on the same route as him, and expected him a little bit behind him. And so he would have time to blow up the ship, get the heck out of Dodge, and eventually he would come upon this blown up ship, but the friend didn't know that that was the plan. And so little friend got greedy and was like, I'm going to take in the ship for the money, and but you can't come out that you're alive when... Yeah,
when they're doing investigations on the ship.
Yeah, and you're trying to get insurance fraud because you blew up the ship.
It's an interesting idea.
But you're still trying to create a new identity because you don't want to be mistaken. So maybe he just cut all ties because he was like, this ship is haunted. I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And to the lifeboat we go.
This is I like this theory. It's fun because there's been a lot of covers of this story in pop culture. Like, there was a Star Trek episode, there was, like, multiple Doctor Who episodes where they find out what really happened. And Arthur Conan Doyle, do you know that name?
Yeah, Sherlock.
Yeah, the author of Sherlock Holmes, he actually wrote a story based on this event where he, like, very slightly changed the names and locations, but was obviously inspired by this. That was like him solving the mystery of what actually happened. Anyways, so interesting. As far as the barrels, the alcohol barrels causing an explosion thing is, the question is, the crew never reported a smell of alcohol when they were investigating it, when they first found it. So that's kind of one of the things where they're like, we're not sure if this could be the case or not. There's no proof. And it would have been pretty stinky. But if they were in on it, why would they report that? Dun dun dun.
How many days itself? That wouldn't be known. Maybe it was out there long enough, because, like, it is in the ocean, and the ocean can wash away alcohol, because if you put glass and then you wash it, it's not gonna keep smelling like rubbing alcohol.
I guess that's true, and it was going through pretty bad weather, so perhaps the storm washed away. And it had been 9 days since they'd last written in the log, and some of the hatches were open to possibly air out fumes.
It's plausible, and or they were in on it and they lied. I like that too.
Either or, yeah. One of the theories was that Captain Briggs had gone into like a mania, and he murdered everybody else on the ship and then himself. Somehow removing all evidence of bodies. And that was a theory that they investigated for a while. I don't know how you investigate that. Oh, they found a sword that had a mysterious stain on it under his bed. And they thought it was a blood stain, but it was just rust. I feel like that one's a harder one, because again, no signs of struggle.
Yeah.
So unless he, like, killed everyone and then went around and tidied everything up, and then he made a snack for himself before jumping overboard or whatever.
So the theory is that the captain of the Mary Celeste killed everybody on board and made himself a little snacky snack and then was like, deuces?
Yeah, I guess so. That one doesn't hold very well to me for a number of reasons. One, again, and everything is... It's weird because it seems like they were in the middle of doing stuff when they abandoned the ship, so like the sails were only partly set. Someone had made a meal. All of their clothes and everything was put away. It was like they were going about their ordinary lives. There was no frantic tables overturned or whatever from people fighting.
Yeah.
There's no blood stains, and they had the ability to look for blood. Like, this was the late 1800s, so some modern forensic stuff was around at the time.
Okay. That one's my least favorite. Like, so far, aside from my theory, the one that seems most plausible is that they thought the ship was going to blow up, so they got off immediately.
Yeah. They think that they didn't intend to just sail away in the boat, in the lifeboat. They think that they got the longest rope they could find and tethered themselves to the boat so that they could return to it after whatever fire or explosions went off, because again, they were in the middle of the ocean, and they still had a better chance of surviving on a broken ship than on a lifeboat, because the broken ship had sails and the ability to move. All of the crew and like the captain and everybody, they were known, I guess. I mean, they were at the port of New York, which was a really big port at the time, so people there knew each other, and after the fact were all interviewed and being like, oh yeah, I knew Jeff and his 4 brothers who went on this ship. They were normal dudes. I guess 2 of the Germans that were the like regular crewmen, at first they were like, everybody's stuff is here except for these 2 guys. Their stuff is missing, so maybe they caused a mutiny and tried to take over the ship, and then they abandoned it, kind of like you suggested. But then it was found out that those 2 had been on a different ship where they'd been tricked and lost all their stuff, so they never had any stuff to begin with. Mutiny. That's another theory about this case. He was, Captain Briggs was known to be kind of strict about his rules. Supposed to be a fair and honest captain, but a little tough on discipline. So maybe the crew members were like, I don't like him, he's mean. I don't know.
Well, why not just hurt the wife and the baby?
Yeah, you would think. There's not much description of what happened with the wife and the baby, other than just like, the wife wrote some letters home to their son. The baby liked looking at a picture book. Oh, that was the other thing that was missing. The picture book was missing. There was a book of photos, apparently, that was the baby's favorite book, but it could have also just fallen in the ocean or something, I don't know.
Or they took it, or the baby was already playing with it when the mom picked him up.
Yep.
Picked the baby up, and then so the baby still had it. Because when you pick up a child,
Yeah.
you tend to, if they're playing with something, you tend to pick up that thing so they'll stay calm.
Yeah, so you don't have a angry baby on your hands.
Yeah. So that can make sense, especially if they thought that the ship was gonna blow up. Although, well, I mean, could they be? The ship blowing up is the one I keep circling on, because that one seems like the most plausible for an entire abandoned ship. Stop everything, don't take any possessions, and get in the boat.
Yeah. I think that's the one that most people like at the moment. And then at some point, the line connecting their lifeboat to the boat snapped, and they wouldn't have had a way to catch up with the Mary Celeste, so they would have just been left adrift. But that's also less fun.
Chose to cut the rope.
Yeah, there you go. He's like, all right, according to my navigation instruments, we should be X miles away from this island. So if we just row real hard and start a new life.
Well, yeah, and if he knew that route well enough, he would probably know what the current is like and what it will do. And
it's not implied that he sailed this particular route before. He'd sailed a lot, but it was a new ship for him. The ship was not new, but it was his first time sailing the ship. And this was a different port than he had sailed to before. But it was a commonly known shipping lane, I guess is the term. So it's not like this was new land they were treading, new sea that they were treading. They knew currents and things that would be along there. Alright, okay, and one final theory, I think. The ship's navigation instruments may have had some issues. Again, because they were going through some really rough winter weather in the sea, and that could have broken some of the instruments. One of them is the chronometer, which it looks like a clock.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically how you measure the distance, how far you've traveled. So when he was plotting his charts, he would be using the chronometer to be like, all right, we have sailed this many kilometers. So when he was consulting his charts, he would think that he had gone X miles in his journey. And they think that at a certain point, he was checking his charts and realized, like, oh, I should have hit land by now, but I don't see any land around me. So he realized that perhaps some of his equipment was faulty. They noted that the captain had only had one chronometer on board, which was unusual. Usually there's a minimum of 3. Some ships have as many as 20, but it's good to have more than one.
What's the chronometer again?
It's the thing that looks like a clock that measures the distance traveled, east to west specifically, because they're basically measuring it by the time. You take the time when you leave on your journey, and then you compare it with your local time by looking at the sun's position at noon or whatever. And doing all kinds of old-timey stuff that we just have convenient satellites for, and phones and radios. But normally, a ship will have a number of these on board, so that if one of them is broken, you can compare it to the other ones and be like, oh, at least one of these is off. But he only had one on board. So they think that if there's a possibility that something went wrong with that, and he did not know where he was in the ocean because his charts, his readings were wrong. So he may have thought that he was closer to land than he thought, and then so he may have jumped in the ship thinking something was going to explode, and then tried to paddle for land that wasn't there.
Okay, or he actually intentionally thought he was closer to land, and was just gonna row there, and then oopsie daisy, not that close.
So I think that's all the theories. So let me consult my notes.
I don't know. What do you think? Like, which theory do you like best?
I do think that they thought something was wrong with the ship. If it was either they thought it was sinking, or that they thought it was about to explode. And they thought that their best bet was to get into the lifeboat and tie it to the ship.
Yeah.
And then something happened, and they got the line broke or something, and they got separated from their ship. Because if they had just stayed on the ship, clearly it didn't explode. There's no evidence of an explosion or fire or anything like that. The ship was perfectly sailable. Some of the masts were a little bit tattered from the weather. There was a little bit of water in it. There was some water where, stuff had splashed in through skylights and stuff. But it was a perfectly functional ship. And that's what was the thing that was really mysterious to people is most captains, especially an experienced captain, would not abandon a seaworthy ship.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to have better chances in your little lifeboat with no food or supplies, just out in the elements on the sea.
So, do you think that the sea earthquake would have felt like a ship running aground?
Oh, that's a possibility. I don't know what a sea quake feels like.
But
I imagine it's just a really big wave.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, because my theory is, like, if he thought his navigational equipment could have been faulty,
Mm-hmm.
and he was supposed to hit land, and at the same time that he thought he was supposed to hit land, because we don't know what time of day this happened. This could have happened in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, he wouldn't have been able to see. Yeah.
Lanterns all around the ship, fire lanterns, obviously.
Yeah.
And he thinks he's supposed to hit land. Sea quake happens. Maybe jostles the boat a little, and so he feels like he is run aground.
Okay.
And knows that there is this highly flammable liquid on his boat.
Yep.
So he maybe hears or starts smelling the alcohol. So he says, everybody abandon ship. Clearly we are run aground, so we're close enough to some sort of land to be okay. So everybody abandon ship, gets on the little lifeboat. The sun comes up the next day, and they realize they're in the middle of the sea.
Yeah. That could be a plausible thing. There was also an idea that maybe they hit an iceberg. I think they've proved since then that it's very unlikely for an iceberg to survive that far into that far south, I guess.
Yeah.
And also other ships would have reported seeing an iceberg because those are serious business, so they would have spread the news.
Well, and wouldn't the ship have shown signs of damage of hitting? Because, I mean, the Titanic hit an iceberg. And...
This is true, but if you'll recall, the ship had already been screwed over because it ran into some fishing equipment way back in the day, so it still had signs of damage from stuff like that. From running, and it had been run aground previously during a storm and in another instance. So they repaired a bunch of stuff, but it still had big gashes and scars across it.
Interesting.
From its previous life. This was a battle-scarred ship. And funny enough, after all of this trial and stuff was over, somebody else bought the ship and eventually decided to actually run it aground and for reals actually try to do insurance fraud off of it, but they got caught.
This ship is like James Dean's car.
Same sort of deal. They think that there's just a curse associated with this poor boat. Yeah, so eventually the new owner was just like, it's already cursed anyways, let's make some money off of this. So he attempted to commit fraud by crashing it on purpose, and then claiming the insurance for it, but they figured out what he was up to, so he got nothing. I'm trying to think if I've got any other closing things about... I feel bad for their kid. I imagine they probably didn't... Even if they were planning to disappear themselves, I imagine they didn't tell their son... Goodbye, we're never gonna see you again. And then he had to grow up with all of these weird theories of what happened to his family.
Yeah.
Oh, pirates got them. The dad went crazy and murdered everyone. A sea monster ate them. Aliens?
Yeah, that would be really hard.
Because this was a popular story. Like, at the time, there were a bunch of, Arthur Conan Doyle's the most famous one, but there were a bunch of... Everybody was like, oh, here's my idea of what happened.
Yeah, and I can imagine that a lot of sailors made up their own stories.
Yeah.
And as he gets older, that kind of follows him around. So that does suck.
Yeah. But
so much is unknown from this story that I can see why it's a long-standing mystery.
Yeah, there's just enough weirdness to it that anything could happen, and none of the theories are perfect. Like even the exploding barrels, which is the most popular one. Again, that there's no evidence that the crew found any leaks, or the crew that was investigating when they first found the ship abandoned, that they found any leaks, that there was any smell of alcohol, and that the captain would have... There was no fire or anything to show that an explosion had happened. Oh, I forgot, the Bermuda Triangle was also a theory. Oh. Even though they were a completely different part of the Atlantic Ocean, but, just in case.
The Triangle doesn't apply here.
Yeah.
It has its own mysteries.
Well, if a ship is abandoned at the ocean, the first thing you ask is, or not abandoned, if there's something weird with a ship or a plane over the ocean, was it the Bermuda Triangle? Doesn't matter if it was in the wrong ocean. We gotta talk about it at some point, because it's funny how many stories are associated with the Bermuda Triangle where the ship was just like, it passed through it once, like, years ago, and then it disappeared, so obviously it was the Triangle.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
This one's hard, because last week with the Atlantis, I could decide, like, fully, no,
this was just a story, yeah.
BS, and I don't think that it was just a story. I don't think it was real. But with this, because there's so many factors, and just human being factors, it makes it so much more difficult to be like, this is probably what happened.
Yeah.
We don't know if the sea was going crazy, and...
just washed them all overboard?
Yeah!
They were all out whale watching. And a big wave, when it splashed its tail, just knocked everybody overboard. Oh, there is a note here that says, the investigators did note that it would be illogical to attach the lifeboat to a vessel that the crew thought it was about to explode or sink. And that Briggs was an experienced captain and should have known better, so, And if the Mary Celeste had blown her timbers, she would have still been a better bet for survival than the ship's lifeboat.
Ooh. What if... I like my theory again.
Okay.
If it was on purpose, and they had another ship, they attached the ship to the Mary Celeste, and they let the lifeboat go in order to throw people off their trail.
Oh, okay, there you go.
And
they're like, we need to leave some clues. We need to leave some breadcrumbs.
And so it just so happened the alcohol evaporated, and maybe he was trying to just get rid of the ship, and maybe his plan was, the boat will either run aground itself, or it will just disappear into the ocean, and storm or something else will take over, and he can claim the insurance money.
But if so here's a question: How does he claim the insurance money if he is posing as someone who is dead or disappeared?
The person that he was who had the second boat, because somehow it has to be manned enough to get out there, right?
The Delgradia, yeah.
Well, yeah, but no, his second boat. That's why he had a long ass tow rope.
Right. That's interesting.
And if the Delgadio had to split up half of his men, to put it on that one, that could also be why it took them so long. Like, why, even though the Mary Celeste was a faster ship, if they're towing a second ship, like the Delgadio took way longer towing the Mary Celeste. Yeah. So maybe the Mary Celeste was towing another ship that they sailed down to a different port to get an unknown, like a port unknown to them.
Could be.
Especially if it was, you said they took off from New York?
Yeah.
So what if they went to Canada? Went to a Canadian port.
The thing is that there had been sightings of the Mary Celeste up to a few days before the logs ended, basically, by other ships on its course.
Dang.
Yeah. But it's an interesting story, and it's one of the true ones where it's like, I don't have a perfect answer for this. Like you said, there's not enough facts, but there's too many weird facts, so that I have some ideas, but none of them match perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, you have listened to me for this, past hour and a half. I have run wild with my theory.
I like your theory. That's kind of fun. So this is basically one of the most famous maritime mysteries. It's why would an experienced captain such as Briggs or his sailors abandon a perfectly sound ship? Well, we don't know. Could have been a mutiny, a pirate attack.
It's times like these that I want a time machine so I can go back and see what happened on the ship and then come back and tell you exactly what happened and why.
Yep. But see, that's the thing is, I kind of like that we don't know, because it's probably a really boring answer.
You're probably right.
And then we'd be like, oh, that's sad. And then no one would care.
later that the captain was really, like, dumb.
Yeah.
And he was like, abandon ship, and they just jumped off the ship.
Yeah. Or maybe they had a swimming party. They're like, you know what? It's a beautiful day out. Let's go swimming. And then the boat, and like, oh, we forgot to take the sails down. Oh no, the boat's getting away from us.
Yeah, that would be dumb.
Yep. Who knows? Anyways, this has been the mysterious Mary Celeste. I hope you had fun with this one.
I did. It was, I got to have a lot more theory work with this one and, like, make up my own theory versus the Atlantis one because I know so little about the Mary Celeste, where I knew a little bit more about Atlantis. Because until you told me the story, I have never heard of the Mary Celeste.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I have no idea. I'm guessing a combination of things. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Did they keep they ran it aground, right? So what happened to it after?
Oh, it sunk. The final fate of the Mary Celeste was someone ran it aground to do actually they proved insurance fraud on that one.
Yeah.
And he was trying to basically have it sink.
It's just in the bottom of the ocean somewhere?
Yeah, it's a wreck off the coast of some island.
Lame.
Yeah.
I mean, that would have... I wish that they had the forethought to keep the boat. The mysterious boat.
Yeah, so you could be like, come visit the cursed Mary Celeste ship. Well, anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and end that there.
Yeah.
Because we've been talking